How do you explain to a 14-year-old that the woman who used to be able to do it all no longer can do it all and also has difficulty at times just getting off the sofa? Welcome back. I'm Virginia. I'm a licensed mental therapist. For those of you who already know, who was recently diagnosed with an autoimmune disorder. And I am just actually diagnosed with the second autoimmune disorder. And so I just kind of want to just kind of dig into this spot where I'm figuring out in time, how do you share with your kids what's going on? And I think that there's a lot of factors that come into play with that. Okay? There's a factor in terms of how sickly, how is this going to affect kids? What are going to be those things that change? The grieving process, the maturity of your kids, the age of your kids, their emotional capacity. And so there's a lot of things that come into play in terms of how we start to make some of those decisions. And so I'm not here to sit here and say that I am the be all or end all of anything. But what I can say is I can share my story and I can share how my family is trying to figure this out. I just a couple days ago was diagnosed with a second autoimmune disorder, which if you've not seen that video on that, please, subscribe to my channel, take a look at that video where I go into that. I kind of sat with the question of, well, you know, what are you going to tell your kids? For quite some time, even when they were talking about Virginia might have a second autoimmune disorder. So, as I said with this question, I really had to take into account my kids, where they are, my health, where it is, but I also had to take into account just growing up. And I remember growing up being essentially second in command. And so I took on a lot of responsibilities, as lots of Black girls do in their households, to essentially be the second mama at the household. So I cooked, I cleaned, helped take care of the kids, I did homework, did all the things, right? So I have chosen to not give a lot of those responsibilities to my oldest child because I wanted her to find ways of being able to nurture and develop who she is and not to have those automatic tasks. And again, that's my choice, my family, my story. Please feel free to make your own choices and don't feel like this is a judgment at all. I'm just talking about me and my story. And so initially my thoughts was, well, I want to make sure that I tell, particularly my oldest child, I want to tell her all the things. And I kind of sat with it. I was like, ooh, telling her this, she is research talks about us, I say us meaning me as well, as highly sensitive persons, or sometimes the research describes us as something called a superfeeler. It's a superfeeler is essentially a person who feels emotions very, very, very deeply and intensely. And so one of the examples that I love to give about superfeelers is when I very first got married, my husband and I, we were trying to have this conversation, try to have eyes meet. And in that process of trying to have eyes meet, I realized that I was having an experience that was hard to put words to, and he couldn't grasp what I was talking about. So I used an illustration. The illustration that I provided my husband, just so that our eyes could meet, so to speak, because I am a highly sensitive person or super feeler. Husband is not. He's a regular neurotypical person. So um, I described it as this. I said, it's almost kind of like I am deep sea diving and I am going really deep into this emotion, so deep that probably the average person would need scuba gear to be able to follow me. And I feel like you're having difficulty putting your feet in the pool, just getting your toes wet. And so I think that was a good like wake up call for him to be like, okay, she's experiencing this level of emotion that's over here. I'm experiencing this level of emotion here. And where we ended up leaving that conversation was essentially, I told him, I said, look, I don't need you to necessarily feel exactly how my nervous system feels things. That's not what I'm looking for. What I'm looking for is for you to hear me, and I'm looking for you to support me. And so sometimes I just told him, if I'm in that spot, I may not need you to emotionally, not emotionally, but to rationally come up with something that just automatically takes away all of my feelings and difficulties. I probably just need you to hold me. Like, just hold me. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to do anything. Just come behind me and just hold me tightly. And that has worked for us for almost 20 years now. So when I'm in those spots, that's something that I know what I. And again, this is not to place any shame on anybody else. I've worked with so many couples that they don't know what they're in those spots. And sometimes they're a couple who's not, who has neurodifferences, just like mine has and myself too. So I realized that my oldest and my youngest, actually, they're both super feelers. They're both highly sensitive persons. Another way of being able to describe a super feeler is how we usually describe it in the office is sometimes as kids, a super feeler, our parents can be raising their voices. They can be saying, look at me, I need you to listen to what I'm saying. And then the super feeler usually says, look, yell at me. And then the parents respond to help with your baby's household. Says, I'm not yelling at you. This becomes this spot where the Supergirl kind of pulls a little gaslit. But I watched it myself with my parents and my kids, where my parents are raising their voice. And maybe not at the point of yelling, not to say that they have it, but they had raised their voices. But in my kids' nervous system, you might as well just yell at me at this point. If it feels the same. Superfeelers experience the world intensely and more richly than the average person. So sometimes they can be labeled as too sensitive or over exaggerating or dramatic or making it up. They're not making it up. Their nervous systems just experience the world in a much different, much richer experience than the average person experiences. And so I am a superfeeler. And I have to be aware of how I'm speaking to my superfeeler children. And so my initial response was, I don't really think I need to tell her that I have a second autoimmune disorder. Like, I don't think that that's really important. It's already rocked their world that mommy has an autoimmune disorder. This is just kind of like what it is. This is where it's at. This is what helps. This is what hurts. No, she's not in any sort of terminal risk of losing her life. So answered all the questions, explained all the things. This is how it might affect us. You might plan to do something, you might have to cancel it in midstream. Or you just might be in pain at different points in time. And there might not be anything that we can do except write it out and just like lots of cuddles and just kind of hang out together. Mommy also might have doctor's appointments. So I felt like we did enough of that already, my husband and I. I didn't feel the need to add another layer because I knew that for my kids, that would be seen as, okay, done, 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 done. This is scary. Something is worse. And so for me and for my clinical picture in terms of my health, it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm worse or not as healthy, but what it means is my picture in terms of treatment is more complicated. So they have to do more things than what they originally thought that they were going to have to do. And so whenever you're taking all those things into account, parents usually know their kids better than anybody else. And so I would just say trust your judgment in that and not responding and making a jerk response out of fear, but also not responding based off of something that's in your own story. Like I said, my story was here's the deeds, here's what's going on, these are all the ins and outs, and this is how it's going to affect you, this is how I need your help. Like, so for me, that was not something that was necessary to do. I actually kind of wanted to do almost the opposite in the sense that she already knows, and if I was a total opposite, I have seen situations where parents have not told their kids anything. And it is so devastating for those kids' nervous system because they can feel and see that something is going on, but the grown-ups are saying that there's nothing happening. And so that could be almost like it's very similar to a gaslighting kind of experience where it's crazy. Maybe the kid feels and experiences the tension, but the grown-up is not. We need to be able to name the distress so that we can help our kids to be able to cope with it. So initially, again, my thoughts was they already know, they know enough. I don't need to say it anymore. I don't want to make this any worse than what it already is. So that just kind of was my stance with it. But what ended up happening because my oldest, again, super feeler, was able to notice like, hey, something's different. What's wrong? What's going on? So I was like, okay, all right. She was listening to conversations. She was speaking like text messages. It's like, girl, you are not my mom. Why did you say all my business? Oh, goodness. But like, she knows enough that I don't want to say that there's nothing because saying that there's nothing is an extreme from overloading her. So I said, well, diagnosed with second autoimmune disorder. She asked lots of questions. I let her ask all the questions. I've not been feeling well today. My energy is just off today. The mistake that I made was kept forgetting to buy my electrolyte. And so that went on for about 30 days. And, so I know my electrolyte balance is just off and I'm exhausted. So I need to have a conversation with her. So I had a conversation with her and my youngest child. I shared just enough information that's not never being overwhelming and scary, but that also doesn't mean that she didn't feel some type of way. That both my kids didn't feel some type of way about it. It's sad. It's sad. And so sometimes for us as grown-ups, what we do is when our kids are sad is we want to smother them with like care and affection. Or sometimes we want to do the opposite. Sometimes we want to get to this place where we're like, what are you talking about? It's not a big deal. Get over it. And we just kind of move on and we shut down our emotions. But if we shut down our emotions, we can't do that process of co-regulation with our kids, where our nervous system and their nervous system link, and we're able to kind of help both the nervous system deal and lean into the emotions. So we made the choice. I made, my husband and I just like, she knows about, you know, let's go ahead over and tell her, like, hey, tell both kids fully, yes, I had a second autoimmune disorder. This does not mean I'm dying. It's not mean it's scary. But what it does mean is that I just, I have more answers as to why I don't feel good. So that has been a really helpful tool. However, it doesn't, again, mean like myself also have a way to not it. My kids have been much more cuddling and and because they're the bosses and grieving. They're seeing their mom as not able to be this strong and invincible woman that I have always been. And so it makes perfect sense that they're going to go through some grieving. Anytime there's a sort of major change, whether it's a good change or not a good change, the body goes through the grieving process. So my kids are very grieving. So there's times when they're crying. There's times when they want their hand to be held. There's times they want to lay in my lap. There's times that they just want to just kind of cuddle. And so I am those emotions arise for me as well because I read the whole nervous system. And so I'm taking time, we're holding it together and being able to kind of ride the wave of some of those emotions until we are at a place where we're both at the shore, so to speak. Sorry, you see my eye go around the place. My dog has been laying with me, staying by me, so steady this entire day. Day's almost over with over here. And he's walking for breath, so I'm distracted to be 100% completely honest. So, but yeah, our kids, feel things. Even if it's not a super killer, they're they might read your text. They might listen to the adult conversation because they're curious, because they care about you. So take some time to find ways of giving small bits of information that are going to be helpful for your child in a way that their nervous system can receive it. That doesn't mean that they're not going to feel some type of way about it. They're going to have feelings about that. And so for us as adults, we need to make sure that we're going slow enough that we can provide those opportunities to co-regulate with their nervous systems so they can ride those waves, they can name what they're feeling, and to be able to regulate with their nervous system. So I appreciate the time that you spent with me. If you did not subscribe, I do ask that you take that time to subscribe to my channel. I'm Virginia. I'm a licensed mental health therapist. And I really hope that you took extra good care. I'm trying to say care time at the same time. Take extra good care of yourself and please take good care of those that are around you. So next time.